Hello, everyone, and welcome to our today's session. We are so happy to welcome you to our today's session. My name is Alina. I'm an Education USA advisor, and here is Education USA Regional again with you. We are offering monthly webinars for those who are interested to apply for their undergraduate and postgraduate degree. So, in case if you need our assistance during your application process, we would be happy to assist you with that. And today we are dedicating our session to an important step that our undergraduate students would have to consider when they would make their application, and that's how to communicate about their activities and their achievements. And we have a speaker that we had previously. That means that we also enjoy to work with her. It's Alona from Minerva University. Alona, maybe I can just give you the floor. You can introduce yourself to the students who don't really know about you, and then just we can move to the presentation.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Alina. Hi, everyone. Yeah, my name is Alona. I have been with Minerva for about 8.5 years now, which seems so long. But before that, I was actually an Education USA advisor myself as well. And so hopefully I'll have a good insights into how to talk about your accomplishments and achievements and good advice in how to deal with them. This is a presentation. I'm going to be honest with you. I'm not the biggest fan of slides, but I feel like in this particular case, slides can be helpful. Feel free to still engage with us. Feel free to write things in the chat. Please write things in the comments and try to engage with this presentation. And hopefully it's going to be helpful. Now we can get directly into it. Let me just share this as a slideshow. I think we should be able to see the slideshow now. So again, the topic of today's presentation is specifically accomplishments, meaning that we're going to be talking about your extracurriculars, co-curriculars, whatever you call it, anything that you do outside of school, right? So any type of an activity that you would do outside of school, how do you essentially communicate that and present it in your application so that you're heard and understood by the admissions team? And there's definitely a number of things to consider, right? First of all, and probably one of the most important things to consider, and I know that Education USA keeps telling you about that, every university has its own admissions process. Every university will have different requirements. Every university will have its own process, its own steps. So first and foremost, the most important thing that's important to understand here is to understand the cadence of the application and the components of the application. I'm going to use Minerva, my university, as an example so that you can understand what it can potentially look like. But please bear in mind that Minerva's admissions process is actually quite different from a traditional one. So again, do your research and understand, first of all, how the enrollment and admissions process looks in whatever university you're applying to. Now, when it comes to Minerva, there's 3 parts to it. The first one is essentially the basic application form that tells us who you are, your background, your transcripts, the schools that you went to, your contact information, information about said school, and so on and so forth. The second part is what we call the challenges, and the challenges are a substitution to standardized tests. Minerva does not require standardized tests because we as a university don't believe in lectures or tests. We can talk about that later if you have questions, but essentially it's a very different academic program that is fully based on design, discussion, on essentially conversations and projects rather than memorizing things for a test. So when we were thinking of the admissions process, of course, we wanted to reflect that, which is why we don't have the traditional tests, we have the challenges. And essentially, it looks like a set of online tests that don't have a right or wrong answer. It's actually pretty fascinating. So if you're interested in learning more, you can definitely reach out to me and I'll be happy to share. And now there's the third part. And the third part is the accomplishments, which is essentially your extracurricular activities. It can be sports, it can be arts, it can be, volunteer experience, it can be maybe the work that you do to support your family. It really can be a lot of different things. And so your job is to really showcase yourself through these very different components of the application to really show the university who you are, how you think, and what you have achieved. And we're going to be talking about that third part of the application. Again, this is how the application looks at Minerva. In every university, there will be a different application portal. And you'll definitely be able to, again, understand what the university is looking for by doing research. When it comes to Minerva, as I mentioned, there are these three components, and we're going to be talking about the accomplishments one. Now, moving further, in the accomplishments, we as Minerva are asking for 6 different achievements and accomplishments. They have to be different from each other. They cannot be 6 different Olympiads, for example, that you go to. And we're going to talk about that in a second as well and why that is. So we're going to be looking for specific things that you do outside of school that come from very different fields. It can come from arts and performance, for example, right? It can be something that's artistic. Maybe you do, you participate in some sort of a performance with an audience. It can be online, it can be face-to-face, but it can be from that particular area. It can be athletic. Sports are quite big when it comes to Minerva applications. However, we don't have sports scholarships, if that's what you're thinking of, but it can help you in the application to the university. It can be a community service and activism activity, right? So it can be volunteering, it can be like a community project, it can be something that has to do with environment, human rights, and so on and so forth. It can be a competition. A lot of students, especially from our region, they do focus a lot on things like Olympiads and, various competitive internships and things like that. So that is definitely something that can go either under this category or under the next one, which is the jobs and internships, which I feel like is pretty self-explanatory. It can be organization and leadership, right? You can have a particular leadership role within a particular project. It can be a club or institution, whatever it might be, but showing that you have done a leadership activity can be really, really helpful in the university application. It can be organized academics and research. So just because you are doing like a co-curricular activity doesn't mean that you shouldn't highlight it in your accomplishment section in your application. If it's something that is outside of your regular curriculum, you can definitely highlight something like this. It can be a personal growth or learning. It can be technology and innovation, or it can be travel and exchange programs. Now, the reason why I have this slide here is because I want to walk you through the very different types of activities that you can talk about in your university application. I remember when I was working in Education USA, I saw a lot of students that would think that Olympiads is the strongest type of an accomplishment because it's academic, because it has, that competition component. And perhaps for some universities that is true, right? Again, do your research and understand what the university is looking for. But there are universities like Minerva, for example, that are looking for that broad variety of things that you have done. And so for us, it's very important that you sit down with everything that you've done and you try to write down specific achievements and accomplishments, maybe not from every category, but from as many categories as possible, because we want to see that diversity of the activities that you've done. What you will probably find is a combination between the two, right? You might find athletics plus competition. You might find organization and leadership plus, organized academics and research, and that is absolutely fine. These categories are not there to put you in a particular box. These categories are there to help you really brainstorm on the things that you do, on the things that are important to you, and understand the things that you can potentially write about. And so this is more like a tool that's hopefully helpful for you and other applicants to try and understand what kind of accomplishments you can potentially write about. Now, this one is probably the most important slide from all of the presentation. So for those of you who are watching, especially from a phone, take a screenshot because I promise you this is probably the most important information that you can walk out of this meeting with. Again, different universities will be looking at different things, but from my 8 years of experience in the field and communicating with other institutions, this is something that I found to be some of the common themes of what we are going to be looking for when we look at your application, and especially when we look at that extracurricular activity section. And this can be helpful in two ways. First of all, it can be helpful in a way for you to really understand and analyze what you want to be writing about. In most of the cases, although not in all of them, but in most of the cases, universities are looking for a particular set of accomplishments, right? They're going to be like, okay, give me top 6 of your accomplishments, or give me top 10 of your accomplishments. And that type of a framework can really be helpful in identifying which accomplishments can potentially be the strongest ones, and which accomplishments you might want to present over the others. That's the first way in which this framework can be helpful. The second way in which this framework can be helpful is in understanding what kind of details you can add whenever you're writing about a particular accomplishment. So when you're looking at your activities, try asking yourself these additional questions to really add, in Russian we say juice, right? And like to really add some substance to the accomplishment itself. So make sure that you're looking at the accomplishment and you're rereading it as someone who potentially has no idea of what it has been. And again, we're going to be looking at your accomplishments from 4 different angles. We're going to be looking at it from the angle of an impact, right? So when we're talking about impact, essentially what it means is that we're trying to understand whether you did something for your own benefit and for fun, or whether it actually affected the people around you in a good way. Maybe you influenced some people. Maybe you have supported your community in some way. Maybe you left a legacy, right? So you have done something, you left the project, but the project still lives on and it still brings result even without you being there. Maybe you raised a certain amount of money to support a certain cause. All of these things, they will show the impact of that activity. So essentially, look at any activity from the angle of like, the things that I'm doing, is it just for me, or is it actually helping someone else? And whenever you're describing an accomplishment, try to add those additional details to answer some of the questions about impact. How is this activity impactful for others? Some activities are not going to be impactful. For example, I don't know, if you're going to a competition, right, and it's just an Olympiad, and you've been preparing, and you've had personal growth, you've had the preparation for the activity, but it's not that impactful for the community. That can be the case, but for some of the other ones, try to look and understand where you can find that impact and where you can specify that impact. The second one is commitment. We're gonna try to understand how much time, how much effort did you invest into that particular activity. So again, when you're describing an activity, try to describe it in a way so that it's actually clear that there has been commitment, right? It's not just a one-time thing, but you've actually prepared for that competition, for example, or for that event, that you've actually invested your time, you've actually invested your effort. Maybe you have gone through a challenge, right? On the way to that purpose. All of these details, they're going to show us that you have been committed to that particular event. And so try to talk about the time, try to talk about overcoming obstacles, try to talk about the effort that you have put in achieving a particular result. All of these things are going to be incredibly helpful. The third part we're going to be looking for, and now in this particular one, be extremely, extremely careful in understanding what the university is looking for. Some universities are going to be looking for all of your achievements and accomplishments just in one field. You're applying for physics, and they're going to be asking for all of the things you've been doing in the field of physics. There's other universities like Minerva that are specifically looking for breadth. We're specifically looking at a variety of accomplishments and activities. We will want to see 2-3 of the same, potentially, if it's Olympiads, for example. But then on top of that, we're actually going to want to see some of the other things that you have done. And your main and important job, once again, is just to make sure that you actually understand what the university is looking for. Now, again, in case of Minerva and universities alike, we're going to be looking for that variety of accomplishments. It will give you more points to specify that variety rather than showing strong result in the same type of an activity. So be very careful and very mindful about the things that you're sharing. And last but not least is depth. Depth is essentially the final outcome, and or like the mastery of a skill, for example, right? So there was the status quo, you have done an activity, and then there is a result. And your job is to showcase that particular process so that it's clear what was the situation before, what exactly you have done, and what was the final outcome. Now, there is an exercise here, and because we're in the webinar format, we're not going to be able to have that as a live exercise, but I do think it's an important one to talk about because, as you can see, there's 3 different accomplishments on the slide. The first one is actually about me. I did win a chemistry Olympiad when I was in 10th grade. The second one is about someone who participated in a clothing drive for the homeless. And the third one is about someone who organized their first expert visits for their school's debate club, and they've been leading that for a year. Last year, they ran 15 events, out of which the most significant one was an event that was called Voice in Action, a 3-day conference where we invited 30 speakers that trained 350 students in storytelling, project management, and networking from 10 different schools. This is now a countrywide project partially funded by the government. And it's actually very interesting. Whenever I ask students to identify which one is the more effective accomplishment, the majority of people are actually thinking about the third one, which kind of makes sense because it is the one that has the most amount of detail. So it's easier for us to try and evaluate the third one because we have some additional context, we have some additional data. When it comes to the first and the second one, we actually don't have any information. And that is the main reason. It's not that the accomplishments are bad, because we don't know which chemistry Olympiad it was. We don't know if it was international. We don't know if it was against 5 people or 10,000 people. We don't know if it was, I don't know. I didn't know chemistry. I didn't like chemistry. I didn't have a good support network. And then I became passionate about pharma. And I became passionate about curing cancer. And now chemistry is my favorite subject. And now I even prepared for the Olympiad because of that passion. Right? Same goes for the second one. We don't know about the participation. We don't know what it means to participate, right? Participation can mean that you have been a part of a group and you have done, I don't know, the marketing campaign, you have worked with various homeless shelters, you have organized 10 pickup points, you have organized the logistics for it, the marketing for it, and so on and so forth, but you were a part of a team. And you come from a culture where maybe it's not as, how would I say, it's not as socially acceptable to share your particular role. At the same time, participation can mean that you took a pair of old jeans and you left them at a pickup spot. And when it comes to the words like participated, supported, and things like and words like that, it's very difficult to try and understand what exactly the student has done. In that first case, as I mentioned, I didn't win the chemistry Olympiad, but I only did that because there were 2 people participating. It was a bureaucratic process from my school, and they had to submit something. And I was a good student. I was not a good chemistry student. I was just a good student. And the administration just asked me to complete the paperwork for the Olympiad. And I just turned to be better than the other person that was also randomly walking somewhere. And they had to do the same thing, right? And so when it comes to sort of like evaluating that impact, evaluating that commitment, that depth, that breadth, without those additional details that we can see in the third example, we really cannot understand what the person means, what scale was it on, what the true achievement here is, what is the background, what did the student actually do, what was their role, and so on and so forth. And because of that, it is extremely important. It is actually your job to communicate all of these tiny details. And it's also your job to communicate them in numbers so that we can also understand the scale and the capacity of the things that you have done. Another example that I have here is essentially the same accomplishment. So the first version of that accomplishment essentially says that I volunteered at a dog shelter. Thanks to that experience, I started liking dogs better, developed a better team leadership skills, and learned how to work in ambiguous situations. Okay. The second one talks about the fact that I volunteered at a dog shelter for 300 hours. During that time, the shelter managed to save up on overtime pay for its employees. And with those savings, purchased 200 kilograms of animal food that fed 150 dogs for 2 more months. Now, the description is pretty clear, like based on the description, it's pretty clear that the second one is better. But the reason why the second one is better is because the person went ahead, probably had a conversation with the shelter manager in trying to understand the impact of their activity. And this is one of the things that is very, very important to learn and understand. You may not always know the impact of your activity just by yourself. You might need to have a conversation with other people in cross-checking and understanding what exactly that impact was. How exactly did you help with your action? Because if you just wrote that I volunteered at a dog shelter for 300 hours, that also gives us nothing. What we're trying to do and understand is that what came out of that? How was that beneficial? How is that connected to maybe potentially the goals that you have or the values that you have? What does that tell us about you? Because whenever we're asking you about your accomplishments, essentially, we're just trying to learn about who you are and what you do, right? We're not just asking it for the sake of having someone who has done something. We're actually trying to understand your values, your approaches to life, the things that matter to you, and so on and so forth. Last but not least, there's another example here, and we can see there's, again, the same accomplishment, but two different descriptions. The first one is that I've been learning Spanish for the past 2 years. Now I'm fluent in Spanish, and I can enjoy my favorite movies in the original language. Obviously, not a very good one, because it really only shows us that the person can learn. We don't know from which level they started. We don't know in which level they are right now, and that they like to watch movies in the original language, right, in Spanish. That's it. We don't know anything else about the person. In the second one, when they're talking about I've been learning Spanish for the past 2 years, and this time I've launched an open door Spanish language exchange program with 10 to 15 native speakers and 75 members from my hometown. 2 of our members have been admitted to Spanish universities. 10 excelled at DELE. DELE is kind of like a TOEFL/IELTS for Spanish. And from here, we can see several things. It's a very clear impact. It has a very clear sort of like understanding of not just the impact from a person's actions, but it's actually a prolonged one, because they took their essentially privilege, their ability and their time and their resources to learn a language, but then they transformed it into an impact for others. So that transformation of doing something I like, and especially this is, I think, most relevant for those of you who are still considering applying to universities, maybe not this year, maybe in a couple of years. This is one of the probably biggest tips that I can give you, pieces of advice that I can give you, is to think about the things that you like and see how you can transform those things into the benefit of others. This is something that will be probably one of the strongest accomplishments that you can provide. It's not going to be the top competition that you have done, but it will be an incredible accomplishment that showcases who you are, that showcases your values, that showcases that you're a good member of the community, and that showcases that you can take your resources and share them with the people around you. And this is essentially what the majority of the universities are looking for. So definitely think about that. Think about the activities that you've done, or the activities that you're doing right now, or the activities you're thinking about doing, and how you can transform them into a benefit for the people around you. And I think this is my last slide, actually. So to sum up, right, there is a number of things, and this is just pieces of advice from our admissions team. The most significant accomplishments are the ones that you can measure easily, and they show a high degree of difficulty, effort, or impact, right? So Again, they should be easily measurable. If you're thinking about writing about something where it was your personal growth and you became a better person, those are fantastic, and we're very, very happy that you're going through development processes. But it's extremely difficult for us to evaluate a personal growth project unless you provide some additional data, right? We have to be objective and we have to be unbiased when we're evaluating applications. So the easier you can make it for us, the easier our job you can make in evaluating your accomplishments, the better. So make sure that you are providing those numbers so that we can measure them. And of course, we need to understand that it was a difficult thing. It's not just something anyone can do. It's actually a difficult or like ambitious project that you have done. Another thing is that ideally an accomplishment should have a concrete and verifiable outcome, right? It should have something that you're presenting as a final outcome of that activity. It can be, as mentioned here, awards, views, attendance, usage, money raised, etc. But it should be something that you can present as the final result of that particular activity. The accomplishment should not be something that almost anyone can do, as I mentioned. It should be something that shows your unique ability or talent, right? We want to see, again, the whole purpose of the application is just to understand who you are. And your job is to really showcase who you are and how you're sort of like how you are thriving in the world, right? And so this is your job to really showcase that. Your role matters. We talked about the role, right? It is important to showcase specifically what you have done, specifically what your role was. And of course, if you had a high level of responsibility, that is the must. You definitely have to show that. If you're measuring your accomplishment just in numbers, remember we talked about the 300 hours volunteering at the dog shelter. The 300 hours themselves, they didn't mean much. But the 300 hours that transformed into savings on the overtime pay, and then purchasing that additional food, and then feeding those dogs for additional 2 months, that is the impact. This is what you want to show. So show not just the amount of time that you have spent on a thing, but actually what came out from it. How did that differentiate you from another person that has done the same thing, and maybe they even did it faster. And links to a verifiable pool size for competitions, news coverage, or social media reporting is likely the best way to show the reach of your accomplishments, right? So like certificates, awards, news coverage, I don't know, a link to a newspaper that was writing about that competition, something to prove that you have done the thing, is quite important. Technically, you can submit a photo, but as practice shows, it's usually not the best because, well, you can potentially just take a photo on any random day on any random stage, right? It's much better to provide something that can actually be verifiable. The faster we can verify, the easier it's going to be for us to make that final decision for you. We are working together with you. We're also trying to find the students that are the best fit for us. Your job is just to show us who you are with maximum transparency and maximum information available. That's pretty much all you need to do when it comes to accomplishments. And I think I have come to the final slide of my presentation. I'm happy to share a little bit more about Minerva if we have any questions about that, but also just happy to answer any questions that we might have.
Awesome. I love everything that you have spoken about in the presentation, because that's what we actually promote to our students. And I recently had a consultation with one of our students, and she was so confused about the fact that she didn't have so many extracurricular activities. But in the same time, she was saying that she's intending to create a Telegram page for some matters or for some auto club, I think, or something like that. I mean, something related to her hobby. And she also had a lot of followers on her Instagram page. And there seemed a lot of interested people, so they could contribute to a cause. They could, create something or do something. So I also think that now in the era of social media, you can do a lot of things, and your hobbies definitely can become something that make you stand out in your application or in your extracurricular list. So yes, I think it's super related, and I really loved that you have specified once more to our students how important is to specify the results, because there are only 150 characters you can use in your Common App for specific extracurricular activity you need to include in there. So you need to be super conscious about how you use that, and every character is important, so use numbers in that section. Don't use words, but maybe more numbers.
Yeah. And what I've seen is that a lot of students, when they're describing an accomplishment, they really focus on the experience that they had, which again is great. Don't get me wrong. I think it's fantastic that you're growing as a human being. But whenever you're providing information that cannot be easily evaluated, objectively evaluated, you are pretty much wasting space. And I need to be brutally honest with students here that if you're just talking about how it made you a better person, or how you started liking children better because you started babysitting your uncle's daughter, those are wonderful things and we're very happy, but it's impossible to evaluate how much better of a person you've become. And so what we're left with is just a lot of information that we cannot verify and we cannot evaluate. It is much better for us to actually have the numbers, like you've mentioned, to have some sort of an outcome, to have some sort of an analysis. I understand that you want to talk about yourself and your growth, and you think that it can be like impressive, I would say. But just try to either proofread it, maybe try to get another person to read it that has no idea what you have gone through, has no idea what this competition is about, what this activity is about, and see if they can understand the gravity of that particular activity. And in most cases, they cannot, right? And so this is why it's important to start thinking about these things right now. And I'm really happy that we're having this webinar in June, because you do have the time to really try and polish, even if you're applying for a university this year, you have the time to try and polish out the things that you would potentially be talking about in your application.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Alona. Okay, now we'll focus on the questions. For those who are now with us, please submit your questions in the chat. We'll also appreciate them. Some of them have been addressed in advance, so I will put them on the screen and we can just start answering those. An example of a question: if I have been developing a social project or youth movement over a long period, how can I best show its growth, evolution, and future sustainability in my application? That's something also related to what we previously talked about.
Definitely. Yeah, that is a wonderful question as a continuation of this conversation. Numbers, for sure, right? The more numbers you provide, the better. I feel like the best way to describe an accomplishment is to start with the status quo. Status quo is what was happening before you started the project. It can be a short analysis of the situation, right? Depending on how many characters you have, because in our case, we have about 600 characters, I think, or 500 characters. So you do have a little bit of space to share that. But again, it will depend on a particular application. The ideal way is to show the status quo, to mention what you have done, the role that you had. It's just a couple of words. If you've been leading the project, you can just say that you've been leading the project. I led the project. That already gives us enough information to understand what your role was. But specify that, right? Include what exactly the project has done. If it's been, you say that it's been a long period, specify the period, specify the amount of initiatives that you had, for example, specify the whatever outcomes you can from those initiatives and where you are right now. If you want to talk about future sustainability, you can. It's just very difficult. Typically, it's very difficult to try and forecast what the outcome is going to be, especially considering how unstable the world is right now. But if you can forecast that, fantastic. That's scenario number one. Scenario number two is you can talk about one particular peak of that organization, and through that peak, by describing that particular event, for example, that you held, you can still give the background of like, overall this organization had 35 different events, but this particular one was so unique and so special, ended up being on the government sponsor list because yada yada yada. That one can also be like a deeper showcase of, again, the gravity of that event through that one example. That can also work as well, but again, don't forget to specify that whole background information. Does that make sense?
For sure, yes. And don't forget to list how many participants and how many participants have been the beneficiary of all that,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
sometimes people miss to do that. Great. The next question, and I think that's the continuation of that, when describing student-led initiatives, how much weight do admission offices places? I suppose that was the question.
Yeah, it will, and you're gonna hate my answer because it will depend on the university itself, right? Some universities pay a great deal of attention to extracurriculars. Minerva is one of them. It's 1/3 of the application. It is extremely important what you've done outside of school to us. There's plenty of other universities that have a similar approach. There are some universities that specifically focus on your test results and your grades. There's some other universities that are focusing on whatever else combination, right? It's impossible to talk about every single university, because one thing that you have to understand about the US is that the US does not have a Ministry of Higher Education that we're used to in our region. In our region, we're used to that there is one entity, not institution, but like one government entity that analyzes all of the universities, provides one official rating system, writes all of the requirements for all of the universities,
Yes.
and that's just that. Everyone has the same approach. It's the same university, just providing different degrees and different level of like quality of education. The US doesn't have that. The US has, what is it, like 4,000 universities, and the only true indicator is the accreditation of the institution. That's how you can understand that the university is strong. But when it comes to sort of like understanding the application, there's unfortunately no other way around it. You have to go to the university website. You have to talk to the people that work at the university if you couldn't find that information from the website. Usually it's in our interest to explain how to apply to a university, but you have to do that research separately. You have to go to the website. You have to understand what the process looks like specifically for that university, specifically for international students. And so until you do that work, you're not going to feel comfortable, not even comfortable, confident in applying to a particular institution. There's no way around it. So talk to different universities, research different universities, understand, and you will be able to answer your question. When I'm talking about Minerva, we put an incredible amount of weight on your accomplishments.
Thank you. The next question, how should I sequence my activities and achievements to show myself from the best perspective?
To us, it doesn't matter. To us, they're being randomly evaluated by a lot of people at the same time. So it really doesn't matter. When it comes to some of the other institutions, again, talk to them, try to understand. In most cases, if there is a particular sequence, they will tell you. No university is going to try to hide anything related to admissions from you. Universities are desperate for good students that are a good fit. They hire people like me to find students. Every university wants to find students. Every university wants for as many people as possible to complete their application. So no one is intentionally trying to hide a secret of the application. And I think this is where a lot of that misalignment and misinformation is coming from, is because a lot of students sometimes are thinking that the university like has a trick that they're not showing, and there's a special way to get into that institution. And this is how all of these agencies and all of the various scammer organizations, this is how they're making money, because they're making you believe that universities are hiding something that can be like an easier and a more sure way to get into a university. That's just simply not true. We want students, we need students to survive, to exist. And so we will do everything in our ability to show what exactly we require, how we want that information to be presented, what kind of details we want, and we actually pay people to do that. And I know that because I am the one who gets money specifically for making sure that students understand this type of information. So again, talk to different universities, talk to different representatives, or in the majority of cases it's just available on the website. For us, the sequence doesn't matter.
Okay, a good question here. What can I do this summer to boost my CV? Or I love such questions as, I'm applying this fall, I don't have so many extracurriculars, suggest me something that I can do this summer and just include that in my extracurricular list. What can you suggest here?
I mean, you technically still have a little bit of time. Ideally, I would want for you to ask this question about 2 years ago, but still, you have some time. Go back to that slide that talks about the framework, the 4 angles through which we're looking at accomplishments, right? That's your number one. So take a look at everything that you've done and try to explain those activities or those job experiences, for example, through that particular framework. Talk about the impact, talk about the amount of time, talk about all of these different things. You still have the time to turn your hobby into something impactful. Use that opportunity. It's usually much easier than you think to turn your activity into something that can be turned into an accomplishment in a university application. So use that time to really analyze the things that you enjoy doing and do something extra. Take an extra step, connect with people. You will probably have the time of your life anyway, right? You're probably going to really enjoy, if it's something that you love, you're probably going to really enjoy spreading it with the world. So make sure that you just focus on that aspect.
Great. Another question that has been addressed in advance: what can I put in the honors section if I don't have any major awards or achievements?
We don't have an honor section, so I probably am not the best person to talk to about that. Again, those universities who do, reach out to them and see what they have to say. Usually it is exactly the people that are going to be reviewing your application anyway, so it helps to directly ask from them.
Okay. Next one: can small or local activities be as valuable as international level achievements if framed correctly? And the second one: what does a strong activity section actually look like in practice for top universities?
I love those questions, especially the first one, because definitely, yes. The international activities are very easy to do when you go to a private school that offers Model UN and all of these different activities, and it's essentially implemented into your curriculum. And it's not that impressive if you have done whatever the school is offering you. However, if you've done an activity coming from a smaller city, coming from a public school, trust me, and it comes from the fact that we're evaluating the context, right? We're not just looking at the activity itself, we're looking at the activity inside a context. And that context, in most cases, matter more than the actual achievement itself. So definitely, yes, the small or local activity, and it might not actually be that small. I've seen students that, for example, have educated 10 of their cousins because it's just a norm in their family. I come from a similar culture. Like, no one is asking you whether you want to take care of your little brothers and sisters, but it is an impactful activity. If you taught 10 people how to read, it is incredibly impactful. You have essentially contributed to education of 10 people, right? And I've seen a lot of students that don't even think about these activities as anything that can be impactful or anything that can be impressive to an admissions team, and they cannot be further from the truth. So it's not about the activity itself. It's about the context that you're coming from, the opportunities that you had easily available to you, and what you have done with it. So definitely don't be discouraged by the fact that you don't go to a fancy international school. If you go to a fancy international school, do the activities, but also do something extra, because we will know that you're going to an international school that offers all sorts of different things, and everyone in that school does the Model UN. So we'll want to see something extra from you as well. Now, the second question, what does strong activity section actually look like in practice for top universities? Again, it has to do with the context, right? It has to do with where you're coming from, what opportunities were available to you, what obstacles did you overcome, right? Maybe you didn't have that many activities. And I've had students, for example, that just had to work to support their families. They didn't have the time to go and do all of the different Olympiads and the different research. They had to work from the age of 15, for example. And I don't want to speak for all universities, but to us, it was incredibly impressive because that student already was supporting the family household. And that context also helped us understand why maybe they didn't have that many like traditional and official like not official, but like traditional accomplishments and achievements in their application, because they were focused on something else. So again, context is much more important.
Thank you. Okay, now the questions in the chat, a lot of them, maybe just allowing 1 minute per each would make us answer all of them. The first one, your website says that you don't require tests like ACT, SAT, but instead have your own separate test. However, if I'm not very good at math, do I still have a chance of getting into the university?
Hey, Victoria, I love that question. I'm going to speak for Minerva, but also for some of the other universities that use the word holistic in their admissions process. Learn about this word. The word holistic means that the admissions process doesn't just focus on one part of the application. So it's not like there is one factor that will determine whether you will get into a university or you won't. So whenever you're feeling like you want to be able to be evaluated as a whole, then you have to be looking for a holistic admissions process. Minerva has a holistic admissions process. So for us, it's not going to define just one challenge in math is not going to define whether you're going to get into the university or not. Maybe you're not a computational sciences person. Maybe you're an arts and humanities or a social sciences or a business mindset, although if it's business, you probably want to have a little bit of math. But essentially, because again, we're interested in that context, we're interested in understanding all of the different ways in which you think. So it is true, we don't require ACTs or SATs. We have our own test simply because we just don't believe in those tests. So yeah, look for the word holistic, and if it's holistic, go ahead and apply.
How hard is that test?
It's very fun. It's not even hard. It's just a lot of fun because it doesn't have a right or wrong answer. It's not like 2 + 2 = 4. It's going to be, here's a plate, name all the ways that you can use a plate. So it's not going to be about like,
it's creative, something like,
creative, logical, the way that you think. Yeah.
Okay, good. Thank you. The next one, how can we provide proofs of verifiable data if some of the numbers we claim are only rough estimates? I think a recommendation letter could be useful, but would it be necessary for verifying stats?
Usually when you're providing numbers, we're going to have to get some sort of a confirmation of evidence. A recommendation letter is always great. But one thing that I would suggest, at least in the Minerva application, don't try to use the recommendation letter as a Trojan horse where you're trying to push more information in. Like it's not going to be, whatever is written in that recommendation letter is only going to be used to confirm that you did the thing. It's not going to be used to getting you additional points.
Okay, thanks. I heard that for admission officers, it is prohibited to follow the links, but links can contain useful information and proofs. Is it true?
Maybe in some other institutions. For us, we actually require links to as a part of evidence for particular accomplishment. So it's fine.
Thank you. Next one, how can we prove that we were engaged in specific activities? To what extent are activities without proof viewed less favorably than those with proof?
Definitely going to be less favorable. And if we're unable to verify an accomplishment, you do risk of just this accomplishment not being counted towards your application. So um, try to find some way of verifying the activity. It can be a contact of a person, although it cannot be your friend or family member. It can be a recommendation letter. There's different forms of evidence, but it's in your interest to provide information that is easily verifiable and easily measurable. That is your job, and you should assume that job.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Another question from Victoria, and I like this one. How does Minerva view the fact that, for example, I participate in a variety of extracurricular activities that sometimes aren't related to the major I want to apply for?
That is who we're looking for. We're not looking for a student who is only interested in one field. So that breadth component that I was talking about, that is one of the things that we're evaluating. So if you're providing all of your accomplishments, and I'm talking about Minerva specifically, if you're providing all of your accomplishments just in one field, IT, for example, and all of your accomplishments, and some universities are asking for that. Again, don't confuse Minerva as ultimate truth for all institutions. I'm only talking in this particular question only about Minerva. Minerva will look for a variety of activity. We want to see that variety, so make sure you're providing that. Again, each university will openly communicate what exactly they're looking for. So just make sure that you're listening when we do.
I agree. Be very careful with that because some of the institutions might really want your extracurricular activities to be connected to your major. So it depends on the institution.
Yeah.
Good. The next one. Should you write additional information of impact you made during activity in CV where you list all activities?
I would, honestly. Again, the different universities would be asking for things, but
Mhm.
the activity itself, remember that exercise that we did about me winning the chemistry Olympiad? Those
Mhm.
words mean nothing without context. You actually want to see, you want to show what exactly was the process, what exactly was the impact, what was the outcome, whatever information you have. But you definitely should be writing that information. Just a list of activities is probably one of the worst ideas. So unless you're specifically asked for that list of activities, assume that you need to write additional information.
Great, thanks. The next one, if I developed the project just 2-3 months prior application, would it cause doubt that this project is for resume embellishment purposes rather than for a real personal goal?
Not really. I mean, I think it would be a cause for doubt if you're unable to explain the project well, you're unable to explain maybe like some of the motivation behind it, because usually it's pretty obvious that you've done something for a university application. Like we've seen so many people volunteering at various places where it's just obvious you did it for a university application, right? But if you're able to explain why you did it, what was the goal, what was the passion behind it, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. We even get applications of students that are still in the process of doing that project. They have their company and they just launched it and going into a university, that company still lives on. So there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. Just make sure that you have a good cohesive explanation of what it is and why it is.
Thank you. Next one, are projects that aren't very long term, from less than a month to a few months, still impactful? Is the most important thing the impact and the way you describe it and if it shows you?
This is why I had the 4 different pieces of the framework separately, right? Because some things can be impactful, but they can be short. Some things can be long, but don't really have that much of an impact. Some things can be with a high degree of competition, but don't have an impact. Doesn't mean that it's a bad achievement and accomplishment. Ideally, you would, of course, have all of these different components. It would be this long project that is super impactful, that was super competitive, and it had this and it had that. In reality, that's not going to be the case in most of the cases, right? So just because a project is short doesn't mean that it's going to have short impact. Just because something is long doesn't mean it's going to have a big impact. So focus on just describing it and focus on doing it well and using numbers again.
And it depends on the role you had in that, because sometimes
Yeah.
students would, like 3, 4, 10 of them would participate in that. And if your role was minimal, think very good if you want to include that. So I would think twice when doing this. The next question, what is the very safe line between being spectacular and phenomenal, as other speakers said, and not to show how much I achieved, for mid-career professionals especially?
I'm not sure I understand the question. The difference between the fine line
Being
between
spectacular and phenomenal, as other speakers said, and not to show how much I achieved. Spectacular and phenomenal is already showing how much you achieved, I suppose.
I mean, are you calling yourself I'm sure you're spectacular and phenomenal, Michael.
Yeah, maybe some more details would be welcomed here.
It's just like I don't know if it's going to be related to this question or not, but one thing, and that comes from more of my previous experience as being an HR in a company rather than an enrollment person at the university. He who must say I'm the king is no true king, which essentially derives to, if you're saying I'm a great team leader, I'm great with time management, I'm great at this, I'm great at that, without any substance, most of the cases that doesn't actually mean anything. So it is much better to showcase the qualities that you have and the achievements that you have through data. Be very data driven, be very data focused in showcasing who you are, especially if you're a mid-career professional. There's a very high expectation from you to communicate your achievements and accomplishments in a very data-driven way. So I would not waste any space on my CV with just these small paragraphs of like, I'm this professional, I am good at this, I'm good at that. Unfortunately, neither with a job in a good company nor with a university, that doesn't bring you to anything. You shouldn't have to say these things. Your work experience, your academic experience should say that for you. This is a conclusion that we should be coming to based on what we learn about your activities. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you. I think we finished with all the questions that we had in the chat, but a question that I would like to address from my side, having the consultations with our students, a lot of them would ask, what about the sports achievements? Because they would think like, if I didn't do any sport during all these years, is that a bad thing, a good thing? Would Minerva consider that usually?
If it's a strong achievement, it can be one of the achievements. For us, it doesn't really matter. We do have students that are heavily inclined to sports, and we are happy to review those applications. We have students that have not really focused on that at all. To us, it doesn't really matter. Again, look at the university and look at the types of scholarships that you can potentially receive. If you're a strong like international level sports person, then yeah, it probably makes a lot of sense. If you're not like that level of an international sports person, then probably like what goal are you trying to pursue here? If you're trying to get a scholarship from the sports activities, then you have to again understand the university, what kind of teams they have, what kind of sports they play, what are the requirements, how do you work with the scouts, how do you present your case as a competitive case, and so on and so forth. For universities like us that don't even have a sports scholarship, and I think that a lot of students just assume because they see it in the movies, they see it like in different places, that all universities have sports scholarships. A lot of us don't. We don't, for example, we don't even have our own team. Like we don't have our own mascot and things like that. So for us, it's going to be considered just like any other activity, just like an Olympiad, just like a research, just like a company that you own. But for some universities, it can be important if they're specifically looking for someone to play that sport. But it's extremely competitive, so you should know that.
Awesome, thank you. And the last one we got in the chat from Victoria again. Which key verbs in the description of your activities are most likely to catch the admission committee's attention? We actually had a list of that, Victoria. If you want, I can share that with you. There are some verbs actually you can use.
Definitely. I mean, I don't have a specific list. I love that you have a list. I would just imagine that it is an active verb, right?
An Olympiad.
Yeah. Participated, supported are very confusing words. Like there are verbs that with just one word, it's very easy to understand what you have done. There are some other words that sound more polite and nicer and more like a, more neutral. That again is accepted in the majority of, I'm assuming, the cultures that we have here on this call, and I'm one of them. And we're used to those words, but a university application is just not one of them. And I love that, Alina, that you have this list. I think
we do.
Yeah,
we do have it. Yes, Victoria, if you want, we can share that with you. We do, because when we help the students prepare for their Common App, I mean, that's when usually they get stuck writing their extracurricular list. I mean, good. So we are also suggesting them this list of verbs. Yep.
Yeah, active verbs. Anything that
active verbs, clear. Yes. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you so much. I really hope that our students enjoyed this webinar as much as I did. Aliona, always very practical, and I really love that everything is super explicit. So for all those who will watch this video after, let us know. Maybe you will want more information about writing your extracurricular list. We'll be happy to guide you within this process. Thanks, Aliona, once again for the presentation and for your good public speaking skills. It's always very good to hear you and to take your advices, and I hope our students will use them. And for all those who are with us today, please scan the QR code you can see there on your screen, and subscribe for all the events that we will have for the rest of the month. And yes, thanks, Aliona, once more. I wish everyone a good evening, and I wish everyone that maybe it's morning for them a good day. Thanks once more.
Thank you for having me. Good luck with all of the applications the upcoming year. So hopefully we'll see a good stream of good applications to all of our different universities. Thanks again. Have a good rest of the day.